This is MRN Crew Call, brought to you by Hercules Tires.
One of the things I love about playoff racing, beyond playoff racing, of course, and I do love that, and the excitement we had at Darlington, is I love when one of those non-playoff drivers gets right up in the middle of it and mixes it up with the playoff guys. And we had that at Darlington on Sunday night. I'm Steve Post, pit road reporter for Motor Racing Network, and this is Crew Call, presented by Hercules Tires, right on our strength. Ross Chastain was strong on Sunday night. No doubt about it at Darlington. He was one of the cars to beat, and he was mixing it up with Larson, mixing it up with Denny Hamlin, and anybody else who chose to run up front. They were going to have to go toe-to-toe with Ross Chastain. Ultimately, Chastain and his team would come away with a third-place finish. Phil Surgen is the crew chief for Ross Chastain. It was only his 44th start as a Cup Series crew chief. He put a good car under his driver, and we'll talk to Phil Surgen coming up here on Crew Call by Hercules Tires.
For decades, Dryden Lubricants has been made in America and made to last, paving the way on our highways, in our fields, and on the production line. Today, Dryden offers a complete line of engine oils, greases, hydraulic and transmission fluids, and diesel exhaust fluid. If you want greater performance and protection for your critical engines and equipment, go to Dryden.com. Dryden, American owned and operated, and a proud supporter of racing and race fans everywhere. Flow Racing is the home of grassroots racing, with over 1,300 races streaming live in 2021. Watch the Lucas Oil Chili Bowl, World 100, Dirt Late Model Dreams, Sweet 16, and much, much more. Subscribe today by going to flowracing.com/MRN. From sprint cars on dirt to SK modifieds on pavement, arena cross, drag racing, and everything in between, it's here live and on demand. Subscribe today by going to flowracing.com/MRN. That's FLOracing.com/MRN.
It is Crew Call, presented by Hercules Tires. Joining us on the Zoom line from over at Chip Ganassi Racing is Phil Surgen. Hello, Phil. Welcome into Crew Call.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Man, it's great to catch up with you. First off, what a run at Darlington. Man, you guys gave your driver a fast race car. It's a lot of work goes into this. It's got to be nice to have nights like that.
Yeah, definitely rewarding. You know, we've been building on it all season, kind of incrementally, and it's really gratifying when it all comes together. You know, we had a solid day all around. The car was good. Ross did a great job, and pit road was amazing. You know, with all those stops, you can't afford to have a bad pit road and a long night like that. But you know, for a while now, our 750 stuff has been pretty good. The road course stuff, you know, Nashville, Dover, and it just all kind of came together the other night. We came up a bit short, but still a really solid run for us.
How taxing is that for the crew members? More pit stops than we'll probably do anytime, maybe the 600. It just depends on how the race plays out. But, you know, how grinding is that for those guys that go over the wall?
Oh, it's definitely grinding for them. And when you consider that, you know, they not only pit the Cup stuff, but they do Xfinity and truck as well. So they had done some pit stops earlier in the day, and obviously being 100 degrees, that you know, it takes a toll. But they kept it together all night. Had good stops. I think the slowest stop they had was still in the 12s.
Oh, pretty solid, that's for sure. That really is. That's neat. Phil, beyond your performance, and I've talked to Matt McCall about this, talked to him on pit road about it, maybe this past Sunday or the week before at Daytona. It looks like both teams at Ganassi, you guys are really clicking off a series of good runs and bringing fast cars to the track.
Yeah, you know, it's like I said earlier, it's just incremental building. You know, both the teams at Ganassi, the 1 and the 42, work closely together, and when one team has success, both teams can learn from that. So whether it's us or the 1, you know, we work closely together, and we can take advantage of things that they might have done good or we might have done good, and put it together, particularly coming back to the second time at Darlington, for instance.
Are Ross and Kurt that similar, or do you know what you need to do to adapt to the individual drivers back and forth?
Know what we need to do to adapt. And honestly, without practice and Ross being new to the 42 this year, and really it's his first opportunity in an A Cup ride. It took us, a good bit of a couple of months in the beginning of the season really to figure out that difference between Kurt and Ross. Um, that was a little bit of a challenge early on, but right now we feel like we have a pretty good handle on what needs to be different for Kurt and Ross.
I want to get into your background, but I do want to start with your co-crew chief there at Ganassi, Matt McCall. And I saw pictures from years ago of Richard Childress Racing. You and Matt go back quite a distance together. That has to be nice as far as working across the crew chief stable with a guy that you know so well.
Yeah, definitely. You're referring to 2014. We were both the engineers on the 31, and we roomed together, and I got to know him really well. And so when I came over to Ganassi, he was the guy I probably knew the best, and obviously since then our relationship's gotten better. And when I stepped into the crew chief role, it just makes that much easier.
Phil, how did you get started down this course? Was it a racing passion? Was it engineering passion? Where are you from, and how did you get started in this?
I'd say it started with a racing passion, and just kind of growing up around it. I'm from Vermont. When I was young, before I could even toddler age, my dad raced oval snowmobiles, and then in the late 80s did some Formula Ford stuff. So I was around it when I was really young. And then when I got to be old enough to be able to go to the local short track, which back home is Thunder Road, I started going every week when I was 14, and that's really where the engineering thing came into it. I knew I loved race cars, knew I loved working on them, building stuff, and trying to figure out new things. And that just kind of led me to, what's next. And that was engineering. So I kind of took my racing background and said, well, let's take it to the next step. Let's go get an engineering degree, and see if I can pursue a career in racing as an engineer. So I got a bachelor's at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts. And then after that moved south for a job at Evernham Motorsports.
Wow, that's pretty neat. That's for sure. When you were doing your college, there's a lot of the schools here in the South. Clemson has a motorsports program. Charlotte has a motorsports program. A couple other ones do as well. Did you do general stuff, or did you integrate motorsports into the program up in Massachusetts? And what was the reaction if you were bringing motorsports into a program that wasn't necessarily motorsports based?
Yeah. To answer your question, no, there wasn't a motorsports concentration. I just did a mechanical engineering program with a concentration in design. Our school had the Formula SAE program, which was the only bit of racing that existed at the school at the time. The program was fairly small. There was only 10 or 12 kids interested in it, none of which had any kind of short track racing experience. So tried to grow that program. I think down the road it got a little bit bigger, but that was really the only motorsports aspect of it, and it was more or less on me to try to figure out how I would apply this in the future.
Neat. That is neat. The Formula SAE, for people not familiar with it, just kind of describe what that is. I think I did something years ago with Texaco was involved with that, if I'm not mistaken. But describe that program that was in place there.
Yeah. So generally speaking, it's a intercollegiate design competition where they lay out some fairly broad rules governing the build of a formula car, and there's it's a multifaceted kind of project because it focuses on the design, it focuses on the manufacturing, lean manufacturing, and then there's a racing component, endurance, drag racing. There's a skid pad event, but so your competition at the time, there was only one competition in Michigan, was not purely based on performance. You got a score for how solid your design was and how good your manufacturing practices were, and as well as the performance of the car.
That's neat. Yeah, I forget. I think it was Texaco. It might have been something with, I don't know. I remember I remember doing something with it at one point, and I thought it was fascinating to have the intercollegiate competition there, and how that ties in. Phil, when you rolled along, you ended up over at Ganassi. You did one race with Kyle Larson, had a top 5 finish, if I'm not mistaken, back a couple years ago. Was crew chief kind of the destination you'd had planned, or did you just kind of take it as it came to you?
When I was 22, 23 years old, crew chief was what I had planned. You know, I did a couple of years in the engineering department, and I did data acquisition in 2005, I think it was. And by the time 2007 rolled around, I was on the road as a Cup race engineer, and I did that for quite a few years. And along the way, the crew chief position was always kind of a goal, but it was never. I was never willing to take something that wasn't going to be competitive or wasn't going to be right. You know, there certainly was opportunities with, you know, um, subpar teams and subpar drivers and such, and it just never made sense to me to go do one of those. So uh, just time rolled on, and I got a good opportunity here at Ganassi, and that's where we sit today.
Neat, for sure. After the race on Sunday night at Darlington, Ross talked to our Kim Kuhn, and he said, "I'm really, really good at going fast. I need to get better at racing." There's probably a way, and I think I understand what he said. But as a crew chief, I would assume that there's a way to engineer things, but there's got to be a race feel or a race sense that you have. That likely that race engineer helped you, kind of get to that level to have an idea what you need to do as far as race strategy and race calls go.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few different elements of it, and the engineering background really helps you on the vehicle dynamic side and the setup side. And as a race engineer, that's your primary focus. As a crew chief, you kind of step away from that, and I manage that. I have I have 2 engineers that are working full time on developing setups and making the car faster. It's up to me to just kind of put those pieces together, make sure that the best aero components are on the car, and those guys are considering, the appropriate tweaks to the setup, and focusing on the appropriate things. So that's kind of what you're talking about. There's just that experience and that level of understanding of racing, that kind of shows up on the managerial level, rather than on the details of the engineering kind of side of things.
This weekend, you roll into Richmond for 400 laps on Saturday night. I was looking at Xfinity results. Ross gets around there really good. He had a pair of top 5 finishes in the Xfinity Series last year. Just kind of assess, handicap what you're looking for this weekend.
We have high hopes going into this weekend. We look back at our first Richmond race, and we started the race too tight. And this was, pretty early in the season when we were still trying to find our feet with Ross and the team. And by the end of the race, there was a couple of green flag stints at the end of the race where we were running really competitive lap times. And unfortunately, we got trapped a lap down, as a lot did, and we're never able to race with the guys that we were running lap times comparable with. So we've taken what we learned at the first Richmond, applied some small adjustments to it, and we've got high hopes and high expectations this weekend that we can run as competitively as we did last week.
Well, Phil, final question for you. We caught you late in the week here. You were part of the Daytona test with the next gen car.
Yep.
Have you had much chance to process what you guys learn about that car, and just kind of what's your assessment of that as well?
I think overall things went really well. We had 8 cars down there. Everybody went right out on track. There was no major issues. Single car stuff was like it always is at Daytona. And then we put them together in the draft, and I would say largely a very similar product. There's some little nuances that are different with the next gen drafting, and there's some challenges with the car that the teams are going to have to overcome. But I think we've identified those, and those are small things, and we'll get through those pretty quickly. But I'd say all in all, it went pretty smooth.
how do you balance going the rest of the season? I know playoff drivers have even a little bit bigger pendulum one way or the other, but how do you balance that? Are there other tests you have coming up that you're looking at, or how do you just balance between finishing strong this year and going forward into next year?
Well, it's difficult, and for Daytona, I relied pretty heavily on our R&D group and our engineering groups to help with prep, and I didn't dedicate a ton of time to the Daytona test. Now, when we look at Charlotte Roval, Charlotte Oval, Phoenix, some of the tests that we have coming up, obviously those are going to be a little bit more important to us a little bit later in the season. In some regard, there is probably a little bit more time available because, the Phoenix build is likely done. The Gen 6 Phoenix build's likely done by the time the Roval test runs around. So there's a little bit more time, but we can't give up an opportunity to win a race at the end of the season. So full court press on that and fit in the next gen stuff when there's opportunity.
Fun stuff, that's for sure. It never ends, that's for sure. Phil, we appreciate you taking some time and joining us here on Crew Call this week.
Thank you.
There we go. That's Phil Surgen, crew chief over at Chip Ganassi Racing for the number 42 car with Ross Chastain.
Citywide to countryside, whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules has the value, selection, and industry-leading warranty to get you there no matter where the road takes you. Go to HerculesTires.com. There you can find the nearest authorized Hercules retail location to you. Plus, you can use the tire tracker to find out which Hercules tire fits your vehicle the best. That's HerculesTires.com. Hercules Tires, ride on our strength.
Sir, are you aware you were going 40 miles an hour? This is a residential area.
Sure, but I'm on my lawnmower? Wait, am I getting a ticket?
No, I've just never seen anyone top 9 miles an hour on one of those bad boys. And mow their entire lawn in 30 seconds? What got into you?
Well, it did fuel up at Sunoco this morning.
At Sunoco, we know how to fuel peak performance. We've been doing it for American racing for over 50 years. Fuel your best.
Ford has put the stock back in Stock Car, and now you can register for your chance to be Ford Performance's VIP guest and watch the NASCAR Next Gen Mustang hit the track for the first time in 2022. One grand prize winner and their guest will receive a trip for two to Daytona Beach with VIP access, Ford Performance driver meet and greets, round-trip airfare, and more. Register now through November 7th at FordNextGen.com. That's FordNextGen.com.
Exciting times in the automotive world, including Ford Motor Company. They are investing $22 billion between now and 2025 in their electrification. This is a worldwide initiative, and it's taking place particularly here in North America at 4 specific plants, including the new Rogue Electric Vehicle Center up in Michigan. That's one of the plants that is producing some of these brand new electric vehicles. They're investing, Ford that is, investing $700 million in that complex, creating more than 500 jobs up there. And all of the advanced sustainable technology will be in place so that they can build the Ford F-150 Lightning and as well as the Ford F-150 Power Boost Hybrid. It is a great looking vehicle, and you can check it out at www.ford.com. under the electrification tab. That's the electrification tab at www.ford.com. Coming soon, the all-new, all-electric 2022 Ford F-150 Lightning. It's the first ever F-Series that's gas-free and delivers trusted, built, Ford tough capability. So exciting stuff, that's for sure, with Ford Motor Company, and exciting stuff in the NASCAR world. We're in the middle of the playoffs with the NASCAR Cup Series. Of course, we kicked it off at Darlington. How about Denny Hamlin and Chris Gabehart, his crew chief? They have moved themselves onto the round of 12. Now is when it gets interesting as we go to Richmond. On the outside looking in, Alex Bowman with his crew chief, Greg Ives. Got Kyle Busch with Ben Bayshore, that is the crew chief there. William Byron and Rudy Fugle, and Michael McDowell and Drew Blickensderfer. I'm really going to be keeping an eye on Bowman and Kyle Busch. Bowman won there the last time we were there in the spring, and Kyle is a 6-time winner. So I know Ben Bayshore will have that Toyota gassed up, souped up, and ready to go. It's going to be fun to see how we go in this middle round middle race of the round of 16. The truckers, they also are in the middle of their playoffs. Round number 2 of the round of 10, or race number 2 of the round of 10 was at Darlington, and the results look the same as picking up the win was Sheldon Creed and Jeff Stankiewicz, the crew chief there. They are 2 for 2. Chandler Smith and Zane Smith looking to lock in or get booted out when the series wraps up the round of 10 next week at Bristol Motor Speedway. That is a Thursday night race. Motor Racing Network will be there. MRN has all the coverage this weekend at Richmond Raceway. Kicking it off, this is going to be a fun race for sure. Friday night, 7 o'clock, the NASCAR Wheel and Modifieds. The Virginia is for Racing Lovers 150. The Ground Pounders, can't wait. That's a big part of my background, and I love watching the Modifieds race. We're kicking it off with Motor Racing Network coverage on Friday night with the Modifieds. Saturday doubleheader coverage, 2 p.m. The NASCAR Xfinity Series Go Bowling 250. And at 6 o'clock, the NASCAR Cup Series, the Federated Auto Parts 400. Salute to first responders, of course, Saturday being 9/11. So a lot of special festivities going around the race weekend at Richmond, as well as we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. So a big weekend at Richmond. You can follow along at mrn.com, get our program schedule, and even set a reminder that will go off to your phone to let you know every time Motor Racing Network is on the air. We appreciate Phil Surgen from over at Ganassi Racing for joining us, but more important than all of that, thank you for joining us here on Crew Call, presented by Hercules Tires, right on our strength.